The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone and welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. In August, and we're taping this at the end of July, in August, Councilman Mark Harris will be bringing forth a proposed ordinance that would effectively ban smoking in all Oshkosh restaurants with a few exemptions here and there. We're not sure what those exemptions would be. We have not yet seen the ordinance. But in any event, he is bringing this forward, I believe, at the first council meeting in August for its first reading. We recently had Mr. Harris on the show to talk about his reasons why he feels this is an important piece of legislation. We wanted to get the restaurant owner's opinion on the issue. And to do that, joining us on this edition are Phil and Lisa Levine. They are the owners and operators of Jeff's on Rugby. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for letting us come by.
We appreciate you joining us. Before we get to the meat and potatoes, no pun intended, of why you're opposed to the ordinance that Mark Harris is sponsoring, why don't you just briefly tell us a little bit about your operation, how long you've been in business, how many employees you have, that kind of thing.
Okay. Jeff's on Rugby was opened in 1984. The owner at that time was Jeff Jansen, who also had Jansen's Bar and Restaurant on Bowen Street here in town. Jeff wanted to expand onto the south side, and our location was a very popular spot for, I would have to say, 80 years before that. Our building was built in the 1880s as Joe's Sample Room. Joe Fenzel was one of our original councilmen in Oshkosh. Went on to open a clothing store on Oregon Street. And it has pretty much been a restaurant, grocery store, convenience store for over 100 years. Again, we opened in 1984 as Jeff Jansen was the owner. I had a chance to buy in 1990. We have been owners now for 13 years. We have 27 employees, and we were the first restaurant, full-service restaurant, independently owned in the city of Oshkosh to go totally smoke-free in both our dining rooms. We did that about 11 years ago. So we are a very blue-collar neighborhood restaurant, something that has been entrenched in the south side of Oshkosh for, like I said, over 100 years. And we want to continue the tradition of our corner tavern, fish fry, blue-collar, middle-of-the-road type establishment.
I want to ask you, why you went smoke-free when you did, but maybe before we get to that, why is this particular issue so important to you? What do you fear will happen if this ordinance is passed, either one of you?
Well, this ordinance to us is just one more restriction on our ability to run our business the way we see fit. I hate to use the word dinosaur, but I am a dinosaur in the city of Oshkosh. 18 years at Jeff's on Rugby, and a previous 6 years at Jansen's puts me 25 years in the restaurant business in Oshkosh. And over that span, we have seen the blood alcohol content go from 0.15 to 0.1 to 0.08, and they're already talking 0.06. We've seen a demerit system brought before the city council. We have seen other things in our industry, health department issues, whatever. It seems like every 3 months something is being dropped on my desk that I have to comply with and deal with in my business. And there was a movie back in the early 80s where I can't remember the name of the movie, but a newsman opened up a window, stuck his head out the window and said, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." This one made me snap. I've had it. And once again, government is trying to help me run my business. If government continues to help me run my business, I might as well lock my doors because I won't have any business left. We're here just simply saying, let us run our business the way we see fit. Whether you're a multi-million-dollar operation like a Fratello's or a Roxy, or a corner tavern restaurant like us or Jansen's. I'm not fighting for any one person. I'm fighting for the whole restaurant industry in Oshkosh right now because everybody is seeing a downturn in the economy. I don't care if it's Oshkosh Truck, Leach Company, Bemis, or a corner tavern. And these kind of restrictions are just going to make it more difficult.
A lot of people make their livelihoods from this business. We also support a lot of college kids who come and ask for jobs, and for 4 or 5 years, and sometimes even after they graduate, they stay with us because then they get jobs and they come back in the summer and they work for us and they go back to their jobs, such as teachers. So many people that would not be able to happen anymore. Someone has to stand up and fight for these people.
Now, you are smoke-free in your dining room,
Yes.
in both dining rooms, and you said you made that decision on your own to do that 11 years ago. What and by the way, I frequent your restaurant, as I think you both know, I have noticed, and I don't smoke. I used to. I don't any longer and haven't for a while. And I can say that I'm not sure what it is that you folks do in the restaurant, but I have to sometimes wait in the bar area before my table is ready, and I'm not bothered by the smoke that's there. And certainly when I'm in the dining room area, I am not at all bothered by the smoke. I don't know what you do, but what do you do to make that happen, and why did you go smokeless when you did?
We make every effort to make sure that our ventilation system is always properly working. And we change the filters as they need to be changed, and that's an investment every year. Those things don't cost $2. We just recently had another gentleman come forth and introduce us to another ventilation system that we are looking possibly into getting, but maybe we don't even need that now.
Right.
Maybe it's a good thing we put them off. But the reason that we went smoke-free in our dining rooms is simply because we did listen to the concerns of both the customers and the employees. And we were hearing just enough that we thought, maybe that's not such a bad idea to go no smoking in the dining rooms, because there was just enough of a bothersome. Sometimes someone doesn't want to sit here. Being a hostess there, they want to sit over there because there's a cigarette over here. They still want to eat. They want to eat here, but can I move over there because I don't want to be if they can smoke at the bar, that works out beautifully. Now they know we're not smoking in the dining rooms. It just made it a lot easier.
Well, and a big part of it was 11 years ago, we were doing well. Restaurants were doing well. We didn't have the competition that we've had now. I mean, the explosion of restaurants along the 41 corridor, the delis that are opening up in grocery stores, the convenience gas stations. There's a lot more competition out there. 11 years ago, it was easier to take a chance because if you took a downturn, you knew you could correct it and you had reserves. You had the ability to make a mistake and recover from it.
And it was your choice.
Exactly. It was our choice to do it. And it was an experiment. It was an
experiment. You had the ability to choose to try something that has been successful for you.
Yes.
It wasn't mandated. You weren't restricted. You weren't overtaxed. And it was successful for you. Now, had it not been successful, you also had the right and the choice to go back to doing business if it adversely affected you.
And it was not successful right away. We took some heat for this. The first 4 months, approximately, we saw a downturn in business. But
do you know by how much? I mean, a percentage?
Depending on the month. I mean, we did this in the fall of the year when our building was more closed up, and because we went through the summer, but we did this in the fall going into Christmas. Christmas was still good for us, so December was not a problem, but I would say October, November, we were down about 15%. December, we stayed about the same. January, we started to see it come back a little bit, where we were still down from the previous January, about 8 to 10%. I was worried that we were going to have to rescind our original idea, but February came around and we saw things starting to come back. We also saw a younger clientele, a few more kids coming into the place, and we thought, Let's ride it out. I mean, we had our reserves, we had things we could do to offset the downturn in business, and it was just our gut feeling at the time that this was a good thing for us, and only us. We made our decision for us. We didn't make our decision for anybody else. And in the long run, I feel it did work out. It may have hurt our lunch hour crowd still to this day, but I can't say that for sure because of the increased competition. So there's so many factors out there that come into play monthly for us that I can't specifically say that any one criteria caused an increase or a decrease in my business. That's another problem I have with the hardship clause in any one of these ordinances. There's no way you can prove one item caused a downturn in business. But that's where we were, and I think it turned out well for us. Mr. Harris, on your show that aired on Monday, I don't know exactly when it was taped, mentioned that I had said at a council meeting on June 24th that a couple of my waitresses had developed emphysema, and that's why I went to it. Couldn't be further from the truth. Mr. Harris is fabricating facts to fit his crusade. We had a couple of waitresses with allergies, and the smoke aggravated their allergies. Nothing more, nothing less.
So they were allergies, not emphysema. Quite a big difference.
Yes.
I thought so. And
Certainly when you develop emphysema, it
Yeah.
certainly creates an illusion that somehow they've been sucking on an exhaust pipe somewhere.
I brought that to Mr. Harris's attention at the last council meeting on Tuesday, and he apologized for his gaffe.
Gaff.
That's my word, not
Oh,
his.
okay. I
That's
thought maybe
my
that
word.
was a word that was just kind of made up for boo-boo.
I'm being polite to Mr. Harris. If he made an honest mistake, he did, but I feel that those kind of fabrications in this kind of heated debate
Are gonna hurt.
only cause more anger. And I'm already angry, so he didn't need to do that.
And that kind of misrepresentation, I think, when you have a misrepresentation and you use terminology like emphysema and cigarette smoke and restaurants, the connotation is that you walk into Jeff's on Rugby and there's going to be blue smoke blowing out the door as soon as you open it, and my goodness, these poor women who have worked for you for the years that you've been in business have had to endure this ungodly amount of smoke and actually developed, by virtue of their employment with you, have developed a chronic COPD condition, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which basically is very debilitating, which then puts you in a position that you have created a lifelong disease by virtue of hiring these women.
Right.
I just want to back up because there was a couple of things that you talked about, Phil, and you said, with some of the legislation that has come down for you and Lisa, the blood alcohol levels, different types of things that you're kind of faced with, it creates a difficulty in you doing your job and being able to perpetuate a business and employment for others. Are there not certain legislative initiatives that you think are responsible? Do you think the blood alcohol level is responsible, and I'm going somewhere with this because obviously I don't want to trail off into blood alcohol when we're talking about smoking, but there will be people that say, drunk driving being what it is, people being killed, is it not responsible for us to start legislating people's behavior so that they become more responsible, that we get tougher on people because we can't count on them to be tough enough on themselves?
Wow. The blood alcohol thing, and again, we won't trail off into that.
Yeah.
We're talking about a freedom of choice issue with the smoking. It's secondhand smoke. Do you want to go into an establishment that's smoky if it bothers you? The alcohol problem is completely different. You don't have a choice if you're going to get broadsided by a drunk driver. That's not your choice. You're not walking in front of them saying, hit me, hit me. The secondhand smoke is something completely different. The offended person has the ability to avoid that issue. And that is our point. The people of Oshkosh with the secondhand smoke issue, please give the Oshkosh people credit to be smart enough to know that they have options and to go other places. They don't have to be led by the hand by legislation to put them in the spot that's going to be the most advantageous for their health. Let them make those decisions. The drunk driver is a completely different thing. Out of the blue, you get broadsided, back, rear-ended, whatever happens with a drunk driver. We applaud any effort to stop the drunk driver. We applaud that.
Unfortunately, this particular blood alcohol level really doesn't get to the chronic alcoholics anyway.
Not going to go into that because that's
Well,
blood
and
alcohol, but I
guess
agree with
that's
you.
my whole point is that while, and I'll use this terminology not to be disrespectful, but it conjures up an image of certain politicians that feel compelled to be the Johnny Do-Gooders, the keeper of the goodwill, the people who know what's best for you, omni padres, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It is frustrating as an adult to have a singular individual or a group of individuals that somehow feel as though they are the only ones knowledgeable enough, clairvoyant enough to be able to determine what's in our best interest as we go through our day. We work every day, we pay our taxes every year. We somehow are smart enough to make it through the everyday drudgery, but we're not intelligent enough to know when to stop drinking, and we don't know, we don't know what's good for us as far as smoking. So there's going to be this group of people, the SS as I like to call it, and SS doesn't necessarily stand for stop smoking.
Okay.
Z Kyle, that feel compelled to control people's behavior.
Right.
And that, to me, I'm a smoker, and I've been a non-smoker, and I've been a smoker. This is a legal substance. It is not an illegal substance unless you're underage. Heavily taxed substance. And I think that, Phil, you and I had talked about this, and this is actually your point, and I want to give you credit for it because I think it's a point that needs to be driven home. These Johnny and Jane do-gooders who really want secondhand smoke to be stopped in order to protect the employees and people who work in restaurants really don't have the stones that they were born with to really do what is needed if they're concerned about cigarette smoking, and that would be to outlaw cigarette smoking, not accept tax dollars for it, and really kibosh the whole thing.
Well, Mr. Harris mentioned on your show that the smoking issue, as far as the federal government goes, is a very political issue. Because of the tax revenue that they make off of tobacco. They're not going to do anything about it. People like Breathe Free Oshkosh and their minions in the background don't have the ability to bring down tobacco. They can't persuade the government. So they're going to ma and pa restaurant owner to limit the places that smoking can happen. Now, in that sense, they're only hurting us. Lisa has come up, she made a point last night that I'm going to let her expand on, that wouldn't their money be better spent educating the young?
Yes.
That's how
And
I
I'm
looked
going
at
to
it.
let
I
Lisa
said,
finish on this.
there's, I'm a non-smoker. Have been my whole life. My husband is too. We're not pro-smoking, we're pro-business, and that's what we've been trying to say. I would be more than helpful to listen to Breathe Free Oshkosh and support them in any effort they may want to do to get it into the school system as young as they can and tell the children what this does and let them make choices as they get older and keep throwing it at them and throwing at them. It's not going to be our generation. I don't even know if it's going to be the next generation, but I'm willing to bet it's not too many generations away before this isn't going to be a problem anymore.
It's not an issue.
This won't be an issue because it's going to flip all of a sudden. My son, who is 7 years old, came home and he was talking about all, cigarettes and drinking and all, and he sees it at home. What he sees some, not all, and he talks about it. He was in the first grade learning that, and I encourage it. I thought, great, these people, kids, they're seeing it at home first. They're not seeing it in the restaurants. They're not seeing that can of beer open. They're
Well,
seeing
that's
it
exactly
at
right.
home
The money
first.
could be spent better proactively, using it for education instead of detracting from businesses that are up and running.
Right.
This is something that is going to constrict businesses right now. Use it
Education.
proactively to educate the young,
Educate.
and this won't be an issue in 15 to 20 years.
Let me go back for just a second because maybe we need to clarify something for the viewing public here. None of us, of course, have seen the ordinance, but Mr. Harris has talked about
secret.
some of the things that he would like to see included in it. you folks are already smoke-free in both of your dining rooms.
Correct.
Explain to the audience, if you would, how this ordinance will directly impact you when you already prohibit smoking in the dining areas.
Okay. Again, the point being made that we haven't seen the ordinance.
Right.
It can be as strict as the Madison ordinance, which we've read, which would require my bar area to be a completely separate room, meaning enclosed with solid doors, doors that latch, not swinging doors, and a completely separate ventilation system. Or it could be something like Madison, where it just says the bar room could be just separate.
You mean Nina?
Nina?
Nina, I'm sorry,
Okay,
Nina.
that's okay.
Nina. There's a wide spectrum of how this can be written. Mr. Harris has mentioned in a phone conversation that we would be looking at enclosing our bar with doors and solid walls and a separate ventilation system. Our ventilation system is 18 years old. And this is air makeup, air return units, things like that. I don't know what this would take. I'd have to have somebody come in, do an evaluation. I know an evaluation, talking to Dave Todd at Razzmatazz, for the air person to come in and do the analysis of Razzmatazz and send the proposal to Madison to see if it was up to air quality standards, cost Dave Todd $7,000 or slightly more. And that's just for the recommendation. Now,
Wow.
to put in the air units and whatever may be done, we don't know. To build the walls and everything else, we're looking at a possible bill of anywhere between $12,000 and $35,000. Am I going to absorb that? No. And every other restaurant is going to turn that around and just right towards the customers. There will be increased prices. There will also be cutbacks in staffing. I mean, people just don't absorb $35,000.
What about, we had also talked about this before too, Phil. While you talk about turning some of those costs around to the consumer, and you know that you can only charge so much for a plate of fish because someone else will do it differently, that's set up differently, like bars who serve fish, who don't constitute restaurant business. And depending on how this ordinance is written, it benefits those people who serve fish at a bar versus somebody like you who actually performs a restaurant tour kind of thing. My question is, not only can you not turn that around as far as in consumer prices, but haven't you talked to other council members about your concerns about having to come up with different promotional ideas to bring people in, what kind of hours that you're going to have to operate,
Yes.
maybe extended hours? Give us some background. I mean, you've been a good neighborhood patron,
Exactly.
a business.
And that's my major concern. We have developed, I think, a very good working relationship with our neighborhood. We try to keep the exterior clean, litter-free. We're not open late. I'm happy we're closed at 11, 11:30 on most nights. Fridays, Saturdays can go to 12:30, 1 o'clock. We don't play loud music. It's a neighborhood type establishment. But if I have to generate extra income to make up for a loss, where am I going to generate that income? Yeah, maybe some drink specials or food specials during the day, but I would also have to extend maybe from 10 o'clock till 1 in the morning and say, let's get some live music, drink specials, any kind of promotion. Okay, that's great. I'm bringing in a little bit more money. But on the negative side of that,
Right.
we are looking at increased noise, increased traffic in a neighborhood, increased police presence. And we don't want to do that to our neighborhood.
I was gonna say, once
We
again-
are a neighborhood. We don't want to do that. I love being closed by 11 o'clock. I can go home and get a nice 8 hours of sleep and come back and redo
Yeah.
it all over the next day.
That's not our choice to do that. That's not what we've done. That's
But
not
you're
what we've
being created. forced to make choices that are,
We will be
again, out of
forced.
your control.
It's an option. It's an option.
And in order to recoup these extensive dollars, I mean, I've seen restaurants that have gone to beer gardens outside because they're trying to capture the business when the business is good. The nice warm summer nights. Gee, let's get everybody in here that we can because become December, January, February, when things start dying down, the economy's in the dumper. How many people have lost their jobs in Oshkosh, not only don't have money for their own health care, but certainly do not have money to be able to go out to eat and do what we used to be able to do regularly. These are some things that we're going to have to do.
Yes, and we don't want to do some of those
No.
things. I've done this for 18 years. I've been the owner for 13. I thought at this point things would become easier, start to relax, enjoy my family, and it's just becoming more difficult. I told Lisa the other night, I'm getting sick and tired of not being able to stay up late enough to watch Nightline. How am I going to develop the ability to stay up and deal with a band till 1 in the morning?
Yeah.
I don't want to have to do that, but push comes to shove. You
We'll
do
do
what
it.
you do to survive.
Well, and you've invested your entire
That's it.
lives
It's our livelihood.
into not just this business, but this neighborhood and a reputation. I mean, this is like, for those of us who don't own restaurants, this is like somebody messing with your home.
That's right.
You know, they're going to play
We-
with your house. You're going to tell me how to, I can't
What
run around in my underwear all of a
What
sudden.
color are you going to
you
paint
know.
your walls?
Exactly. What color are you going to paint your walls? I mean, I've had discussions with other council members who thought that the Landmarks Commission was a good idea. We should pick the shingles and the windows and the color of the paint. For God's sake, we've got more things to worry about in this community. I just have to make one comment, and I was actually going to keep my powder dry because I'm a little emotional about this issue myself, because as I was reading the NENA ordinance, one of the lines, and Cheryl and I were kind of going over it together, one of the lines that was in there that I got to tell you just frosted my cookies to no end. I view myself as a rather law-abiding citizen, and I'm a pretty conservative individual. I mean, I try very hard to stay on the straight and narrow, and I understand that there's laws and we have to follow them in order to be good law-abiding citizens. But I'm just trying to find, where was
Back page,
is it the
the,
back page?
yep.
The unlawful? There's a statement in here that basically says,
Let me show you, right here.
oh,
The very last clause. Right here.
no, not the unconstitutional part, because
Oh, that's-
I'm looking for the, basically what it says is that if I light up a cigarette, oh, here it is. The intent and purpose of the smoking ban in NENA, intent and purpose, it is to recognize that the health of people is adversely affected when in the presence of smoking in public places. This ordinance is adopted for the purposes of protecting public health, safety, I didn't know anybody's safety was in jeopardy if I, comfort, general welfare of the people, including restaurant employees. And then basically it goes on to say that if I would light up, that it is unlawful. Now, first of all, I'm consuming a legal substance. I'm not saying it's good for me, and I certainly don't encourage people to start up because it's just not a good thing. But I am not breaking a law by virtue of my age purchasing cigarettes, and certainly to this point lighting up. And to make people feel as though they're some kind of cretin individual by virtue of lighting up a cigarette, I just have issues with it. But the intent and purpose is where I really, again, my cookies get frosted. And my concern is that these ordinances are to protect the general welfare, comfort, and safety of the general public as well as restaurant employees. And I just want to make a comment. I find it interesting that this particular city council, including Mr. Mark Harris, is hypocritical enough that they think they can bring an ordinance forth to protect employees. This is the same city council that didn't get off dime one off their rear ends when Mériteurs jobs were being lost. People were being laid off. Their salaries were cut down to $10 an hour. People were losing their health benefits, losing their retirement, losing their pensions. They didn't feel compelled to protect those employees from a shyster employer who wants to put them out of business and affect their families. But they're going to make sure that your employees are safe from cigarette smoke, even though you've already done it.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Harris himself, on another show similar to this one, it was on Commentary,
Yes.
made the remark that he did not feel it was government's place to get involved in
Those discussions and those disputes with employers and employees.
Right.
But yet, see, this
It
is
seems like
the...
to attach himself to a special interest group too. That I found that kind of unusual. That he's heading that. I mean, it's kind of like he's at the head of it, and this is a special interest group that he's
Well, he's carrying water, and I think that the difficulty here is that it's hypocritical. You cannot say in one breath that the city council has no responsibility to the workers of this community when their pay is being cut, their benefits are being cut, they're being treated worse than cattle. Worse than cattle. People who have worked for these companies for 50 years or better will have no pension, no retirement, no health care benefits for issues outside of secondhand smoke. Cannot take care of their families any longer, potentially will lose their homes. And then have the audacity several months later and come to people like you and say, we feel compelled to protect your employees from your inability to do so and from your clientele because we think we know better. Is that not, I mean, is it just me that seems to feel as though that's incredibly hypocritical and chicken little-ish?
Yeah, well, however you want to put that.
I agree with
Yeah.
you.
I think the council had a hard time dealing with Meritor simply because of the size and scope of the issue, and they backed off on that. Here we have a bunch of relatively small mom and pop operations that they don't feel can raise enough of a stink to battle them. They're wrong. I mean, the noise has gotten loud. Mr. Harris, I would say 3.5, maybe 4 weeks ago, mentioned in the paper that he has not heard any negative response from the restaurant people or anyone else. I'd love to have that same question asked to him today because he's taken some flack. We, in a matter of 10 days, have collected 2,100 signatures. 10 days.
Just in your restaurant alone?
No.
Okay.
It has gone around the city. I was able to stop at 33 places that I knew these were in. We have been distributing, I'll take 6 and give 2 to this restaurant and that, and they're making copies, and it's spider webbing out. I went around yesterday and today and just collected what we've taken up to this point because I wanted to show, because I knew this survey that was in the paper yesterday would come up in topic, where they surveyed 401 people. 73% of that, if my math is correct, is like 293 people agreed with a potential smoking ban. I can almost 10 times that right here. And we've only had 10 days.
Not 2 years.
Breathe Free Oshkosh has had 2 years. So we are sitting on this. And I will grant you, anytime you take a petition, probably 10% of the things on here are John Doe or somebody who lives in Amro or Nina. That still is 1,900 signatures. 1,900 signatures will get a councilman elected. And we're not done yet. So we are still collecting, and we will collect for another month. So anybody out there who wants to sign a petition, go to your local bar or restaurant and sign a petition. I see no problem with us walking into the council meeting on August 12th with at least 5,000 signatures. And that tells me that Oshkosh is pro-business.
And that's what we're saying, not pro-smoking, pro-business.
Pro-choice.
Pro-choice. Let the owners decide individually what they want to do.
If I could read the petition, it's very short. We, the undersigned, feel that a smoking ban ordinance is an unnecessary restriction on an already over-regulated industry. With the slow economy, our local restaurants are already battling a downturn in business, and we feel this will harm them even more. We are not pro-smoking, we are pro-business. Allow each business to decide which avenue to take regarding the smoking issue, and please allow this sector of the Oshkosh business community to thrive. That's all we're saying. And it's amazing how many non-smokers are signing that petition because they believe in the freedom of choice. Oshkosh has, and I may have already said this on the program, I'm a little nervous, but we have...
It's all right, you're doing great.
We have Pelora's, Fields Restaurant, LeSure's, and
Laura's
Tortilla Flats.
Right.
4 completely smoke-free restaurants already in the city. The rest of the restaurants in the city have various degrees of smoking restrictions. The Oshkosh people can make an intelligent, educated choice on where they want to go. If enough customers don't stop in your restaurant because you're too smoky, that restaurateur is going to be intelligent enough to know they have to change something.
Do you also think that it's important, and I guess maybe I'm maybe jumping to conclusions, but being on the council for 11 and a half years, I kind of know how these things work. They're coming after restaurants now. Do you really believe that it's going to stop at restaurants? Because it's kind of like divide and conquer. We'll attack the restaurants now and we'll get what we need.
This is easy. 0.08, what's next?
Right.
0.06, restaurants, what's next?
It's kind of like you give them an inch, they take a mile. It's never
They
going
bite.
to be
That's right.
enough until there's a total elimination and
Exactly.
outlaw of cigarettes. But in the meantime, the destruction that is done and the limitations on choices.
right.
Right now, you guys are going to be the impetus, and when I say you guys, the restaurateurs, you are the target right now. But if there's anyone foolish enough, at least in my opinion, to believe that it's going to stop with the restaurateurs and not move into taverns and not move into other establishments like pubs and whatnot, they are deluding themselves because people like this are never happy until they have total, complete victory.
80% of the places I stopped in today, it may be 78%, but just off the percent of the places I stopped in today would have fallen in that below 50% category of food sales. They would have actually gotten a little benefit from a 50-50 split on this ordinance. Whereas I couldn't be smoking maybe a place like, and Pat, I'm going to use your name again, Terry's, who does a minimal food business. We'd have people running there because they could smoke and still grab a sandwich.
Right.
You know what? They're still behind our petition.
They're helping.
80% of the places I stopped at would have benefited from this ordinance in the short term, but they are smart enough business people to know it's going to come knocking at their door, if not next year, the year after. So we have to kill this now, because it's just not the restaurants that are going to be affected by it, because eventually it'll be the corner tavern that serves 1 or 2 frozen pizzas. You know, that's where this is going, and like you said, if anybody's naive enough to say it's just going to be restricted to those few restaurants in the city of Oshkosh,
They're going to use you as the stepping stone, because if you've already said that you've made some choices and it's worked out well for you.
yes.
Now, there's no saying that there might be a period of time where you're not feeling the adverse effects necessarily. There also might be a real dive in the effects of what this ban could do to you. But what they're going to do is they'll use certain examples like, well, look, we did this to the restaurants and nobody's really complained, and therefore we can move on to another venue, and we haven't gotten any more grief from the restaurateurs, and it's a divide and conquer mechanism. They'll pit the two of you against one another in order to accomplish their singular goal, and that is smoking is evil, people who smoke are evil, and you're killing all of us who don't smoke.
I want to go back to the, you had brought up about the poll that was published in the July 23rd.
July 22nd, it was actually
22nd?
in the newspaper, the article.
The results of this poll were published in the paper. Thank you. And I'm going to quote from the lead paragraph in this piece, because I have some problems with the way the reporter Alex Hummel wrote this. And it says, quote, "A St. Norbert College survey shows 73% of City of Oshkosh adults support an ordinance prohibiting smoking in city restaurants." Now, as a journalist, I really, really have to take exception with that lead paragraph, because it is really very broad, sweeping, it's far-reaching, it's inaccurate. 73%, the entire population of the city of Oshkosh was not polled in this study, which is
Breathe Free Oshkosh.
probably about 50 or 60 pages long, and I have all the results of the study. Have not had an opportunity to go through them all yet, but I think that a more accurate statement would have been that 73% of the 401 people surveyed would support an ordinance in the city of Oshkosh banning smoking in Oshkosh restaurants. Not this, which is absolute falsehood. But now that I've gotten off on responsible and irresponsible journalism,
Well, and I think that that's a very good point, though, Cheryl. When you have only surveyed 401 people in a community that has a population of over 62,000 people and growing,
Right.
and that doesn't even include all of our institutional population. I mean, 401 people doesn't even represent 1% of a population, and then that's spread out in different age groups and socioeconomic groups. This is not a solid representation of adults, and I'd really like to know where they got the names of the people that they called, because can you just picture this? I mean, they're saying that random calls came in. There's listed and unlisted phone numbers. Can you just picture, like, the Cancer Association giving them a list of people who've donated money and calling them up saying, do you strongly favor or strongly oppose a smoking ban in the city of Oshkosh?
and I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
but I've got to make this one point, and I
just sit
don't
back
want to.
and listen.
And I don't. And you folks haven't seen the survey.
No, we have not. I'm curious about this.
But I want to, if I can find it here, because it was very interesting. Now, I have done in my lifetime part-time work as a survey taker, a pollster, whatever you want to call it. And the way some of these questions were worded, I find interesting. Because it specifically tells the person doing the calling not to read one of the questions. For example, and I'm just pulling a question here at random, please tell me how much you favor or oppose a local ordinance in the community of Oshkosh that would prohibit smoking in clubs, taverns, and lounges.
Notice that clubs, taverns, and lounges.
Okay, and the options are strongly favor, somewhat oppose, strongly oppose. Then by doesn't matter, it says in all capital letters, do not read. So in other words, they're taking away a choice from the person.
But they don't care one way or the other.
You know, I mean, you're basically saying, okay, do you favor it or do you not favor it, and do you strongly favor or strongly oppose?
It's funny. I think there's a misunderstanding. Most people in restaurants, I think a lot of people think we have graduated from the University of McDonald's and moved on to our present jobs. And that's not true. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh in clinical psychology and industrial sociology. We did a lot of polling work, a lot of statistical work. And I remember one quote that one of my statistical teachers taught me. It came from a mathematician and philosopher from the 17th century, Disraeli, who said, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And you can take any set of statistics you want, bend them any way you want, and you'll look like you're a brilliant human being. 401 people, poor survey count, for one. I mean, that's not even close to being a representative sample. I mean, we probably have 401 different socioeconomic, ethnic groups in the city, so maybe they got one from each area. It's a poor study. Two, who commissioned the study? It does not say that on it. They just didn't do this voluntarily. Who commissioned the study? I don't remember reading that in the article.
Well, it was sponsored by the American Cancer Society.
Oh, imagine that.
Did I tell you?
Fine.
Did I tell you?
Lisa and I went on the internet last night, and we went to a certain website that generate about the bad things that the smoking ban has done in the states that have adopted smoking bans. We came up with 39,752 separate articles about the bad things the smoking ban has done.
Because
And to give the pro-smoking ban people their due, they can go to their website and probably find 39,752 articles for the pro-smoking ban. Throw all that crap out and let's deal with Oshkosh and what it will do to us today.
Well, so basically, you do not give the results of the study much credence.
It's lining a bird cage.
Okay.
I have one question. That is priceless. That should be on a commercial. That's priceless. One of the questions that I want to ask, or maybe a comment, is one of the things that Mark Harris has talked about and a Breathe Free Oshkosh has talked about is the protection of young employees because I asked the question, why are you only going after the restaurateur employees? And they said because you hire younger people so they're exposed at a younger age, whereas people who work in bars are usually older because of the drinking and so forth. Now, that being said, and again, we're going to protect employees, would it not be smarter, would it not be a more direct approach and less hypocritical to raise the age of legality to purchase cigarettes? You can buy them at 18 now.
Mm-hmm.
Why not make it 21 like when you can drink? If you don't want the younger people to be exposed to cigarettes, why are you allowing them to purchase them at the gas station at 18, but they'll stop them from coming in and get secondhand smoke from you in your restaurant now?
I can dispel that completely without even you having to go into legislation turning it to 21. You're worried about the younger employees that are working in restaurants that have bars attached. Okay, they can't be a waitress in a restaurant that serves alcohol because they can't serve the alcohol in the dining rooms unless they're 18. So those 15, 16, and 17-year-olds that a lot of these people are worried about can't work in the dining room. They can't be bartenders. So they're back in the kitchen, where I can tell you there's a lot more unhealthy things going on as far as the grease and the smoke
grease
and stuff.
just exposure to
So-
equipment.
The younger employees in a restaurant situation are nowhere near the smoke anyway.
Unless, of course, it's a place that doesn't serve alcohol,
Unless
like
it
a
doesn't
McDonald's
serve.
or something
there's-
like that.
We have
But a McDonald's and a lot of these chains don't allow smoking anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not there. And a lot of your restaurants that don't serve alcohol are pretty much 80% smoke-free. They may have a small non-smoking section. If you're that concerned about those employees, simply say that those employees can't work, those 15, 16, and 17-year-olds can't work in a smoking section.
Or have them, as you had suggested, I believe, at one of the council meetings during conversations with counselors, that a waiver be
Yes.
Right.
drafted that says, hey, mom and dad, this is a restaurant that does allow smoking. Is this agreeable to you? Here's the exposure. Give them some educational material. Let them educate themselves. God, here we go. Take some responsibility and accountability.
You know, I almost feel that the people from Breathe Free Oshkosh feel that some of these people that are working for me are walking around with a ball and chain tied to their foot. I use the term indentured servants. These people come to us voluntarily for jobs. They know the situation that they're walking into. It's a choice they made. It's a right they have. Please stop protecting people. They don't want to be protected anymore.
I had a couple questions from some viewers who contacted me on this issue. And the first one, and I'm going to read them because I don't know them by heart. The first one is, do you feel it is discriminatory not to hire someone simply because they have health issues or concerns that do not allow them to work in a smoking environment? And I think, for example, there, a job perhaps is offered, this is the way the gentleman explained it to me, a job perhaps is offered to someone as a wait person. And then they understand at that point, once the job's offered to them, that they may have to work or serve in a smoking type area. They then tell you that for health reasons or personal preference reasons, whatever, that they cannot be in an area where they're exposed to smoke. Then all of a sudden the job offer is rescinded. Do you feel that that is discriminatory? That's what the viewer was asking.
I don't know if I can use the word discriminatory. You are not living up to the job description. Okay, you have a certain job description coming in, and that's serving people either in a smoking section or a non-smoking section. I can only talk for my restaurant, being totally non-smoking in the dining room, so there wouldn't be that problem. In other restaurants, I think restaurateurs, if you have a good employee who can handle a smoking section, you will make every effort to schedule them only in the non-smoking section. You do that for good employees. We
But
do.
wouldn't that be, I mean, I'm just listening to the question for the first time, much like you are, and I guess I don't view it as discriminatory. I mean, if you know that there's going to potentially be smoke and you have this allergy, would you not, at the point of interviewing, exclaim to your potential employer that this is something that you may have difficulty with, much as a person with a bad back isn't going to go and try to get a job at, say, and I'm just pulling this out of my hat, Oshkosh truck to lift 200 pounds every day.
The first thing that popped into my mind, a lifeguard who can't swim.
Yeah.
I got a job, and I said, oh, you mean I got to jump in the water? I don't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Afraid of water.
Yeah, I mean,
When you're interviewing someone, you do give a job description of what is expected of you, and if you don't think you can even do the job, why would you even apply for it?
right.
I mean, it's gotten to that point.
Unfortunately, in a litigious society, sometimes people do just to see what can happen.
Sure.
It's kind of like the lady spilling coffee from McDonald's and not knowing the coffee
Was
was
hot.
hot.
The second viewer question actually kind of surprised me a little bit, the substance of it. It had to do with some conversation that's apparently been taking place over at the senior center. Now, these folks, according to the gentleman I spoke with, the folks at the senior center are very upset about this proposed ordinance. They feel that it is very discriminatory toward restaurant owners. So some have suggested that a more fair approach would be to ban smoking at all indoor places in the city of Oshkosh, and that way the enforcement is evenly spread. And it's not, it's affecting everyone equally. And the gentleman wanted to know your thoughts on this, and would you support such a ban? And I can see by the looks on your faces, no, you would not.
I'm going to let Lisa go.
Take a drink and soak up
It's not.
of water.
We're not going to make this a health issue. We're making this a choice, a freedom. You're taking away freedoms, folks. I think that's where people they have to realize that's what they're getting angry about. They're feeling violated. They're feeling like I'm getting something taken away from me, and I think that's what they need to be told. That's what's happening. You're feeling angry because you're feeling violated. They're taking away a choice. They're taking away another freedom. They're afraid that something's going to happen where people are going to start losing their jobs. They can see that the older generation has lived through enough. They know. Maybe we should really be listening to. I mean, it's time to go to the senior center and sit down and have a talk with them.
Well, of course, but they're the ones who are
They
also
know.
suggesting a total ban.
But the problem with the total
much like has
ban-
been done in California and other places.
But there you just mentioned a whole state. You do a whole
To be
city
fair.
of Oshkosh.
So they're just saying to be fair.
To be fair, go total city of
Right,
Oshkosh.
right.
Amero's 16 miles away. Winneconne's 19 miles away. There are options that these people, they will leave the city of Oshkosh
Yes.
and do things that they can't do here. So a smoking ban in the city of Oshkosh is counterproductive to the economy of Oshkosh.
Well, I find it interesting because I'm listening that the seniors feel as though that this is very discriminatory, which I totally agree with them. I mean, I think it's a civil rights issue, my right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you don't like it, just like if I don't like watching all those crappy reality shows that just make me crazy, I turn them off.
Exactly.
I turn them off.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that the seniors would say, let's just eliminate smoking altogether. Would the same seniors, I guess my question would have been to this gentleman or to the seniors who are proposing that, would they then, how would they like if we said, okay, age 75, no more people get to drive, male, female, because statistically we've been able to prove that your reactions in crisis situations are not quick enough. So therefore, at this point, at 75, no one drives. Public transportation, start paying for it.
Well, there we go.
I mean, but that's basically kind of where we're going.
You can't do that. You can't do that. It's a freedom of choice issue. Everybody is an individual. Every business is an individual. You deal with things that are thrown in your lap the way you need to do it to make your life happy within the rules of the law.
We are accountable and responsible for ourselves, and we need to remember that.
The only people I have to answer to, I feel, are my parents, my wife, and kid. And I don't think anybody else has the right in this day and age to legislate my business to the point where I can't do business anymore. I find it ironic that we are legislating the bar and restaurant industry to the point that very soon the only places that you're going to be able to exercise the vices of drinking, smoking, and gambling is going to be at a church picnic.
Oh, there you're going to open up a can of worms.
And I have no problem.
Why would you do
I
that?
support many of the. I
Well,
support
actually,
many of the local church picnics.
in
I'm
the
not
Nina-
blasting the church picnics, but
In the Nina one, that They
Church
exclude
picnics,
churches.
churches.
That's the very
Because
first one
those
they
are
exclude.
private entities.
But we can't become a private club
Right.
and then charge our customers a
Right.
penny to come in because we have a liquor license.
We're quickly
And we
running
get
out of
taxes.
time here. We've only
Imagine
got like
that.
about 3.5 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
But I wanted to ask you. Yes, good. I wanted to ask you now. You know, the big argument, and as a reporter, I've covered a lot of this kind of thing in different communities. And the big thing from the restaurant owners is always, we're going to lose business. And then you have other people coming back and saying, counter their point, well, where it's been done here, there, and everywhere, there has not been. And so here again, just like you were saying, Phil, it's, you know, tit for tat kind of thing. Have you talked to any restaurant owners in Madison, in Neenah, to see if they truly have suffered a loss in business when the ban passed?
I just want to do this. I have personally not talked to anybody locally, but in this New York Post, so everybody reference back to New York, the big city, Madison or whatever, it says right in here, highlight, business at New York bars and restaurants has plummeted by as much as 50% in the wake of the smoking ban. The drop has already sparked layoffs and left some establishments on the brink of shutting their doors.
This poll was taken in May of this year. Their smoking ban went into effect in April. So that's the latest one we can find. Again, that was part of the 39,752
All right.
things.
And that is New York, but
The Four Seasons restaurant in New York, world famous restaurant, is down 40%.
Wow.
so do
So
I
it
even?
hits
I
everybody.
don't want to even know what it's going to go down.
We can't take the risk right now. That's what I'm saying. Am I willing to find out? No. I think the gamble is too severe to try this right now. Right now our economy stinks. Everybody's business is down. If you would talk to any one of my suppliers, they would happily tell you that their business is down between 10 and 20%. These are people who sell us the goods that we need to keep our business operating. If we don't have the goods or we're not ordering the goods, that means we're not selling the goods. So I've invited our city council to call a Reinhardt Foods, a Cisco, Pete Krummenauer from local here, Burger Sausage in town, Shaneburger's Bakery. Call them and ask them, how are our local restaurants doing? They're
And the
going to
ripple effect that will create with all these suppliers, because you
Exactly.
can't buy the deals because you're not getting the volume, which means the prices go up because you can't buy in volume.
Exactly. So right now is the wrong time to try an experiment like this. We can't absorb 4 months of 15% down. These hardship clauses are so restrictive, 4 months down the line, 90 days, this kind of thing.
Do you think any
Nobody will do
time
it.
is going to be a good time to try this? I mean,
Not in
really,
my
if,
book. No,
if,
honestly-
if the bottom line is that we're all arguing that this is an infraction of choices. This is an elimination of our rights and freedoms. Is there ever going to be a time that this is a good time to do these things?
No,
In about 10 seconds.
Oh wow.
No, because it's an ethical issue as far as allowing business people to run their businesses as they see fit. You're taking the right away from tax-paying American people to run their businesses as they see fit. There's never a right time.
Okay.
There's never a right time.
All right. On that note, Phil and Lisa Levine from Jeff's on Rugby. Thanks very much to
Thank
both
you
of
for
you
your
for
time.
being
We
Thanks
here.
really
for-
appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you very much for joining us as always. We'll look for you next time. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take care.